welcome back to our channel. Have you ever imagined a point on the map that, if disrupted, could cripple the global economy and trigger a large-scale conflict? That point exists. It's a narrow passage between two landmasses, known to sailors and politicians alike as the Strait of Hormuz. For centuries, this strait has been a vital thoroughfare, yet few realize just how crucial it is to every aspect of our modern lives. From the cars we drive, to the electricity that lights our homes, to the goods that flood our markets, everything, in one way or another, relies on the flow of oil that passes through these waters. And therein lies the biggest threat. The Strait of Hormuz sits squarely in the shadow of one of the most controversial nations in the Middle East, Iran. Let's first understand what the Strait of Hormuz actually is. Geographically, it is a narrow body of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. On one side are Oman and the United Arab Emirates, and on the other, crucially, is Iran. Its width varies, but at its narrowest point, it's only about 39 kilometers wide. That might sound wide, but for a super busy international shipping lane, it's incredibly narrow. There are two main shipping lanes, each only about 3 kilometers wide, separated by a buffer zone. Imagine a super congested highway, but on water, and without clear lane markings, except for GPS coordinates. Why is this strait so important? Because it is the only sea route for the vast majority of oil exports from major producers in the Persian Gulf, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar. More than a fifth of the world's oil supply, or about 20 million barrels per day, passes through these waters. If you compare that to global daily oil production, this figure is truly staggering. It's not just crude oil, but also liquefied natural gas from Qatar, the world's largest LNG producer, which is mostly shipped through the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine most of the energy that powers the world has to pass through this tiny bottleneck. Now, let us talk about the key player on the northern side of the strait, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran's relationship with the Strait of Hormuz is not just geographical, but also historical and strategic. Historically, Iran, or ancient Persia, has held control and influence over this region for centuries. Its long maritime border along the Gulf and at the Strait of Hormuz provides a natural claim over these waters. However, far more crucial is the geopolitical link. Iran views the Strait of Hormuz as its primary strategic asset, a trump card that can be played at any time. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the continuous deterioration of relations with the United States and its allies, Iran has repeatedly threatened to close the strait in response to economic sanctions or military intervention. These threats are not empty bluffs. The Iranian Navy, especially the Revolutionary Guard Corps units, has invested significant resources in developing anti-Axis area denial capabilities in the Strait of Hormuz. They possess thousands of sea mines, anti-ship missiles from land and from nimble small boats, mini-submarines, and armed drones. They have repeatedly trained for strait closure scenarios. For Iran, the ability to threaten this shipping lane is a powerful bargaining chip. It's their way of telling the world, if we are pushed to the wall, we can make you all feel the consequences. Now let us confront the most feared scenario. What would happen if Iran actually closed the Strait of Hormuz? The first and most immediate impact would be on global energy markets. Oil prices would skyrocket to unprecedented levels. Imagine 20 million barrels of oil per day suddenly disappearing from the supply. Analysts estimate prices could reach hundreds, even thousands of dollars per barrel within days. This isn't just due to physical scarcity, but also market panic. Futures contracts would be in disarray, and speculation would run wild. Consequently, a severe global economic recession would ensue. Fuel for transportation would become prohibitively expensive, hitting the aviation, shipping, and logistics industries hard. The cost of producing goods would soar due to high energy prices, leading to rampant inflation. Companies would struggle to operate, mass layoffs would be inevitable, and stock markets worldwide would plummet. Not just oil but also liquefied natural gas supplies would be disrupted. European and Asian countries heavily reliant on LNG from Qatar would face a serious energy crisis, especially during winter months. Home heating, power generation, and chemical industries would be severely affected. The next impact is a humanitarian and social crisis. Soaring food and basic commodity prices due to high transportation and production costs would hit developing countries the hardest. Social unrest and political instability could erupt in various nations unable to bear the economic burden. And of course, there are the security and military implications. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz would almost certainly trigger a military response from the United States and its allies, who have a significant interest in maintaining freedom of navigation in international waters. This could lead to a full-scale military conflict in the Persian Gulf, with the potential for regional and even global escalation. Iran might use mines, missiles, and small boats to disrupt shipping, and U.S. forces would attempt to clear the lanes. Battles on land, sea, and air could break out, threatening oil and gas facilities throughout the region. Given the immense potential for disaster, the world is certainly not standing idly by. Various efforts are underway to avoid a closure scenario and to mitigate its impacts. One key effort is alternative pipelines. Several Gulf countries have built, or are considering building, pipelines that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. For instance, Saudi Arabia has an east-west pipeline that runs to the Red Sea. The United Arab Emirates also has a pipeline that transports oil to the port of Fujairah outside the strait. These are efforts to reduce absolute reliance on the Strait of Hormuz, although their capacity is still far below the volume passing through the strait. Additionally, there are strategic oil reserves. Many countries, including the United States, maintain emergency oil stockpiles that can be released onto the market during supply crises. However, these reserves are designed for short-term crises and would not be sufficient to cover a long-term supply deficit if the Strait of Hormuz were closed. From a military standpoint, the presence of the U.S. Navy and its allies in the Persian Gulf is a primary deterrent. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, based in Bahrain, regularly conducts exercises to ensure its capabilities in keeping shipping lanes open, and, if necessary, clearing mines or confronting other threats. Their presence sends a clear signal to Iran that any closure attempt would be met with serious consequences. Finally, and most importantly, are diplomatic efforts. Negotiations, sanctions, pressure, and dialogue between Iran and world powers continue, though often tense and convoluted. The aim is to find peaceful resolutions to disputes, particularly regarding Iran's nuclear program and its support for regional groups, thereby reducing the likelihood of Iran feeling compelled to close the strait. Despite Iran's repeated threats to close the Strait of Hormuz, the big question is, how likely is Iran to actually do it? There are several perspectives in analyzing this. From one side, Iran has strong disincentives against closing the strait. Firstly, a closure would economically harm Iran itself, as they also need this route for their oil exports, although they do have some minor alternative routes. Secondly, a closure would almost certainly trigger a U.S. military response, potentially devastating Iranian military infrastructure and even threatening the regime. However, from another side, Iran might see it as a last resort, if they feel they have no other options. If Western sanctions truly cripple their economy to the point of collapse, or if there is a military attack on their territory, Iran might decide that closing the strait is the only way to create a global crisis, forces attention and negotiations. It's important to remember that Iran has a strong ideology and is often willing to take significant risks for its objectives. The Iranian leadership might believe that the leverage they gain by closing the strait is worth the risks they would face. Furthermore, Iran's military capabilities to disrupt shipping have significantly improved. They don't need to enact a permanent, total closure. Simply creating sporadic incidents, small attacks, or planting mines that make the lane unsafe would be enough to drive up insurance costs, delay shipments, and create panic in the markets. So, while a full closure of the Strait of Hormuz would be economic suicide for Iran in the long run, the possibility cannot be entirely ruled out, especially under conditions of extreme pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is more than just a waterway. It's the lifeline of the global economy, a geopolitical flashpoint, and a symbol of our modern world's vulnerability to energy supply. Security in the Strait of Hormuz is a collective interest. Every nation, both producer and consumer, has a stake in keeping this passage open and secure. The threat of its closure serves as a stark reminder of how fragile our global system is, how interconnected we are, and how quickly stability can turn into chaos. While the international community works to navigate complex relations with Iran and reduce reliance on fossil fuels, the Strait of Hormuz will remain one of the most closely watched tension points in the world. Global security, economy, and politics will continue to revolve around this narrow gate. The future of the Strait of Hormuz is a reflection of the future of international relations. Will diplomacy and cooperation prevail over the threat of conflict and unilateralism? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching. If you found this information helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses of global issues. See you in the next video.